Hello, you just clicked on a video by a channel called Indie Game Clinic, which probably means that you are currently making games, and if you're not making games, you just like to think really hard about it, which is fine as well. That's kind of what I do most of the time. One thing that's very clear is that most people making games are doing it on their own. They're doing it as a solo developer, and I would say if you're a solo developer and you have done group projects before, you've done lots of group projects and you've got to a point where you've realized, you know what, actually I work better alone, then that's fine. I totally respect that decision about how you work. But if you are a solo developer and you haven't really had group projects, or you just had one, made to do something at college and it didn't turn out very well, I would hope that that doesn't put you off from trying to do group projects, because the kind of scale of what we can do as creatives just goes up massively when you start collaborating with people. I think there is a lot of value to working alone when it comes to learning new skills. So if you think of these two things that you would have to do to be a successful game developer, or any successful creative really, it's learn new skills and make a thing of quality. And I would say generally, when you work alone, you learn a lot of new skills very quickly, and that's really helpful. And it's also helpful for working out what you actually want to do, because there might be a sub-discipline within game development that you prefer doing, and if you could find someone who liked doing all the other stuff, you'd have the perfect collaboration, right? So solo projects, very good for learning lots of stuff, but collaborating with other people who have their own specialist skills and probably can do certain things better than you can do them is usually going to give you a better result in terms of the quality of the thing you're making. The phrase I've heard people use before is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, because so many of the games that I'm sent from my channel, when I review people's designs and talk about how they could improve them and stuff, so many of them are solo projects, and often you can just see where the big weak point is in someone's skill set and like where they would need developing and so on. But if you think of, that experience of making a game on your own and only really having your own thoughts about the game and not having someone there to bounce thoughts off, just think of how much more quickly you're going to identify a problem if you're talking to someone about it. But one of the points I'm really trying to make is, when you do collaborative creative projects, and that's like making a game studio or forming a band and whatever, you don't just have the hard skills of all the members, like this person can program and this person can animate. You also have all of the sensibilities and tastes of the members, and that could lead to clashes and arguments, sure, but if you end up with sort of a compatible group of people, then you could end up with some really good complementary stuff. I think story is a really good place to look at this in games. Like, there are so many developers where that is absolutely their blind spot, and it might be that you just acknowledge that that's not a skill you have, so you deliberately make types of games that don't have stories in, and that's a good thing to do if you're a solo developer, and just acknowledge what skill you don't have and try and leave that thing out. But there are a lot of developers that don't go down that route, and they try to make a genre of game that is dependent on having a good story, and they don't actually have a background in doing any storytelling, whether it's trying to write a book or a comic or being a DM for their mates when they play Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever skill of storytelling you might need. That is an area, like the big sort of world building and creative direction type stuff of a game, where you as a sort of hobbyist programmer working on your own on your game might just be way too close to the minutiae of how things in the game work to see what it needs to do for a player in terms of like providing them with some sort of fantasy and some sort of satisfying narrative, even if it's not a literal narrative of characters talking or things to read about the game world, even if it's just the sort of game design of like the emotional back and forth of the crafting in your game or whatever it is. Sometimes if you're the person programming everything, you can just end up way too close, and having another person around can help you step back from that. Why do I care so much about this? Well, what would make me personally very, very happy is if the amount of games getting released on Steam halved. I think we should have less games in general. Why? I'm not talking about just like doing a Thanos snap and arbitrarily getting rid of games. What I'm talking about is getting rid of all of these projects that could have been so much better if it wasn't one person working on a game on their own. I would like for there to be a larger proportion of people who have released a game and who are genuinely proud of the thing that they put out, rather than looking back on it as this sort of failed semi-learning project, rather than something that was really crafted to get people's attention and keep them playing for ages. You know, this is a channel for people who are already making games and kind of want to be able to understand the design stuff of taking those games and making them better, which is very different from what beginner game dev channels are like, which is just like, here is how to install an engine, here is how to write a script that does this type stuff. I think lots of us learn how to make games on our own because it's the only option available, and then we get very, very used to working on our own and then get locked into the idea that the great thing we're going to make one day will only be achieved if we continue working on our own like some kind of wizard up a mountain. And I would just like to shake that up a little bit and propose that maybe if you take more chances on collaborating with people, you're gonna end up with something better in the end. And it's with that I want to announce a game jam that I'm going to be running in April. This is the first jam that I will have run from Indie Game Clinic. I've run them before for students and stuff like that, but this will be the first big online one for the channel. The actual theme for the game, or the kind of mechanical constraint of the game, hasn't been decided yet. That's something I'll be talking to Discord members about over the next month and kind of doing some votes and stuff around that. But there is one big rule to the game jam. Anyone can enter. You don't have to be part of our Discord. You can be a random person out there in YouTube game dev land, but your game has to be a collaboration. And by that I mean that whoever you work with on this game, you're doing new stuff for the game, right? You can still use asset packs and stuff like that if you need to, but just using an asset pack or just using someone's music that they've composed before the start of the jam, that is not the type of collaboration I'm talking about. I'm talking about the sort of thing where you need to be talking to each other, sending each other files, having little debates about the best creative direction for the project and all of that kind of stuff. Why am I doing this? Why would I torture you so? Well, because I think it's needed. And I've talked with the community quite a bit about running a game jam at some point. I've always said that if I ran game jams that are attached to Indie Game Clinic, then I want those jams to have a very specific sort of educational agenda of why you're doing it and what skills you're going to develop, or, you know, what sort of problem you're going to think around. And that is the reason for this kind of rule of it being a collaboration-based jam. I spoke in the first half of this video about why I think collaboration is important and why I think people should learn to collaborate if they don't know how already. This game jam is effectively my way of putting my money where my mouth is and saying, look, I've told you this thing, I've told you a belief about, you know, the important skills for game dev, and I've told you you should collaborate. Now I'm giving you an opportunity to practice that and get better at it, because if I'm not providing some sort of solution of like, here's a thing you can do, here's a thing you can try and do to develop this skill, then there's no point me just complaining that people don't have that skill, right? As someone who is involved in education and training game developers, I should be offering you opportunities for you to learn the skills that are most lacking in the community, and collaboration is one of those. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you are a person who is maybe not a game developer, but you have some other kind of creative skill like writing, making music, anything like that, drop us a comment, let us know that you're out there, because this jam is going to really depend on having people sign up who have a very diverse array of skills and different things they can contribute to game projects. So hope you think it's a good idea. I'm going to do it anyway, even if you don't think it's a good idea. See you soon, and good luck with all the projects you're currently working on.